Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello everyone, welcome to Healing the Spirit. I am excited to share this exquisite conversation with Marisa Michelson with all of you. It's a very alive conversation about singing, about creativity, about being human, the longing to express ourselves, and the connection between spirit and singing. Marisa is, without exaggeration, one of the most inspiring humans I know, and I feel really grateful to have come across her work. I remember the first time I started diving into Marisa's work, having this feeling of, wow, I can't believe there's someone who is interested in some of the same questions I've been asking in my own spiritual and creative path. And not only has this person allowed themselves to ask these questions, they've created a whole body of work that allows other people to explore this question with them. And Marisa's work felt revolutionary to me. It felt really gentle and also really powerful at the same time. So I feel very grateful to not only have encountered Marisa as a person, but also to have the opportunity to interact with her work and to also allow her work to change me as someone who is practicing alongside her and learning from her. So let me read you Marisa's bio to introduce you to her. Marisa is a multiple award-winning composer of music theater, musicals, oratorio, and choral works, and was the founding director of the psychedelic vocal performance ensemble Constellation Choir, an immersion in voice, movement, and spirit which performed throughout New York City and internationally for 7 years, debuting a new music composition with the New York Philharmonic at Lincoln Center in 2018. Her musicals have been produced off-Broadway. Her oratorio was performed many times in New York City and in Salt Lake City, and you may hear some of her music wherever music streams. Marisa has been obsessed with all the magic that is the singing, voice-giving, expressive human for over 2 decades, exploring the uniqueness of solo, ensemble, and multiply interweaving voices as a composer, a performer, and a sought-after somatic singing teacher. Somehow, voice giving and its relation to the body, spirit, and psyche has continued to call her forward, no matter the musical genre, and beyond any binary between performance and healing, composition and improvisation, process and product. After almost 2 decades of devotion to the Libero Canto School of Singing, a primary lineage of hers, she created the School of Vocal De-armoring, a somatic and holistic approach to working with singing and voice giving in a way that connects us more intimately with the layered dimensions of self. Vocal de-armoring is not focused on particular aesthetic sound outcomes, though aesthetic improvement, which is subjective, is an important byproduct, but instead on self-connection and on learning to sing from a place of honesty. At the same time, vocal de-armoring practices help a person develop musical and vocal mastery. Vocal de-armoring is also about deconditioning and humaning from a place of truth. Marisa lives, works, plays, and teaches in Ankrum on Mohican land in upstate New York. I encourage you to check out Marisa's potent offerings. She offers one-on-one work, both online and in person. And if you are listening to this at the time that this podcast episode is released, Marisa will be hosting the next Vocal De-armoring Community Weekend on October 25th to 27th, 2024, which is sure to be an incredible experience. I spoke a little bit about my experience attending the Vocal De-armoring weekend, or actually it was Community Week this past summer, and I had the most unbelievable time. And lastly, Marisa also has the Vocal De-armoring channel, which is a virtual membership space via Mighty Networks where you can access ongoing live classes as well as a library of practices to help explore the voice in a self-directed manner. All right, here is my conversation with Marisa Michelson. Welcome to the podcast, Marisa. Thank you so much for being here. I'm
Thank
so
you for
excited to
having
see
me.
you.
I'm so happy to
Yeah.
be with you. So happy to be with you again on
Yes.
our second attempt.
This is our second attempt.
Yeah.
And also your second time on the podcast because the last
Yeah.
time you were here with Katie Dove and
Yes.
we were talking about Heart Song. But
Yeah.
yeah, since then, I want to catch our listeners up on
Hmm.
our interactions, maybe just to kind of
Yeah.
give a little bit of context.
Yeah.
I was up at your house early July for Vocal De-armoring Community Week, which was
Yeah.
such a beautiful experience.
It was.
It really was.
It was.
I'm
Yeah.
still like thinking about it, and it's like a
Hmm.
diamond that I keep looking at from different facets in
Hmm.
my mind.
Oh. That's so beautiful,
Yeah.
Jonathan.
Um,
Yeah.
I also have had a couple lessons from you. I had one lesson from SB, who's a graduate of your teacher training program.
Right.
So I've gotten to experience vocal de-armoring firsthand on top
Mm-hmm.
of, your contribution to Heart Song with Katie.
Mm.
Um, and
Mm.
then a few days ago, you sent me your music, and I've been just swimming in the ocean of your music. I mean,
Mm.
um, what was so incredible about really letting myself immerse in your music, Marissa, is I think you just gave me a little bit of an access to who you are as an artist, which
Mm.
feels like such an important part of who you are
Mm.
that maybe prior to listening to a lot of your music, I
Mm.
mean, I've always suspected
Ah.
this part of you because I've watched quite a few of your performance videos.
Mm. Mm.
Remind me
Mm.
the title again. Fever of Love? No.
Oh yeah, yeah. Fever of Love from
Fever of
Song of
Love.
Songs.
See,
Yes.
I got it.
You did. I'm
um,
impressed. Yeah.
I love that performance. I thought that performance was just it always
Mm.
sends chills down my
Mm.
spine. I'm always like, whoo, listening to
Yeah.
it. And I think listening to your pieces over the years have also given me an appreciation of the different mm, chapters of your journey,
Mm.
which is
Oh. Yeah.
really quite
Yeah.
I mean your exploration has been incredible, Marisa. So I
Mm.
don't know. I don't want to be front loading you with all of my admiration. We'll like titrate it throughout the conversation. but I just want to say yeah, thank you. Thank you for being
Mm.
you. Thank you for
Mm.
all that you do, and I'm excited. Can't wait
I
to
really,
talk to you.
I'm so excited to talk to you about it, and I really appreciate you listening.
Mm.
I I sent, yes, I sent you an email that really was also, like I said, for me, I was making a list of different pieces that I've written over the years that I wanted to I've been in a real phase just in the last few weeks, honestly, of going back to my old work, and it's been like a homecoming for me personally, and it's really, really sweet of you to listen to so much of
Mm,
it. Yeah,
mm. I
in
mean,
preparation for this.
it was such a pleasure and such a
Mm,
feast.
mm,
I
mm.
started listening to one and I couldn't stop. So there you go. I wasn't putting my researcher hat on. I was just really like, wow,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so I thought maybe we'll begin there.
Mm.
There were a couple things that I thought that came up, you know, and before we were recording, I was telling you
Mm.
that, um, a few words kind of came up for me, and
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
we'll start with this sense that I was getting listening to your music, which was that it feels to me like you are someone who, or in your work, your training is really in service of expression. You know,
Mm.
and when I talk about expression to me, there was a very specific sensation or experience that I was sensing, which was I feel like a lot of your music speaks to that moment where we feel completely saturated by life and the experience of being
Huh.
alive. And it's
Huh.
almost like there's no words for it, and
Mm.
it has to be expressed through a different
Mm.
way of being. And
Mm.
it's interesting
Mm.
because you and I have in different you know on different occasions spoken about the voice itself and
Yeah.
about how you know the upper mechanism and the lower mechanism, or what a lot of people call the head voice and the chest voice, have kind of gone in and out of fashion, or like
Mm.
there's kind of this
Mm.
relationship between them.
Mm.
We're currently living at a time where a lot of people sing with their chest voice instead of head voice.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
And
mhm.
what I'm feeling into is also mm, how in a lot of your music, the music that you wrote, there is this experience of um yeah, that experience of saturation and like
Huh,
our relationship with
huh.
saturation and
I
being
see.
saturated by life, and how a
Mm.
lot of us as modern people, especially in the Western world, we're so reliant on our verbal cognitive
Mm.
expression
Mm.
that there are all these
Mhm.
other ways of expressing ourselves, right? Through
Right.
sound, through
Right.
body language, and
Yes.
we've kind of lost touch with a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what you feel about that, but this is how I
Oh,
feel about the
thank
culture and
you.
about
Oh,
where we're at
yeah.
and about your music. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what a cool reflection. That's
Mm,
so interesting, the word saturated. And I guess I didn't expect that for you to
mm,
say that this, in a way, through line, because there are many different phases. Like there's when I was younger, I wrote very, very kind of musical theater songs that are melodic.
mhm,
And it's like I have a song like that, and then much more later on experimental where it's just vocal fry and people are like, So that somehow in the through line there is this feeling of saturation is so interesting to me
mm,
that you would reflect, and I also feel moved that you would reflect on a through line at all. Um, but it's quite moving to hear because
mm,
in fact, as both a composer and a teacher, a vocal de-armoring teacher, and creator of this way of working with voice called vocal de-armoring, and teaching that to other people, and as the director of an ensemble that I led for 10 years in New York City that was
mm,
nonverbal and
mm,
was about, it was called Constellation Core and Immersion and Voice, Movement and Spirit. The through line that always did feel true to me was embodying nonverbal modes, ways of being, touching into, tuning into, and learning about, and then growing and expanding these capacities that we have. inherent in being a human that is beyond language, and that there's nuance there and there's subtlety there, and there's actually an entire universe to be discovered. It's not just like, it's not surface, and it's not like, oh, if I just learn to make some sort of blah or sounds,
Mm.
that's tapping into it. It's like it has its own kind of internal structure that we can explore and swim in, this universe of nonverbal expression and communication.
Mm.
And that's true. I think that is true. That's where what I'm somewhere always tuning into as a composer and performer, singer, teacher, and working with improvisation with my ensemble, and then with, as a teacher, with people I work with, inviting these ways of composing from the body,
Mm.
of softening the cognitive and linear structures of communication, and expanding into this other space that is so hard to talk about because there really are no words. It's there when we get there. It's there when we feel it together.
Mm.
And it's when done in a group, like this is not just something I do, improvising in general, when it's without words and when done in a group can be so profound as far as what we're able to sense in the other people we're with and between
Yeah.
us, and the flows. It's like almost like create, like the body, like we have these lines of, we have veins and blood that runs through our bodies, and it's like creating a space externally from ourselves that is blood running between us. There's these
Mm.
channels of communication that can open, and what's alive in there can be so profound and moving and interesting and beyond it's almost non-dual. It can almost be non-dual. Like we can
Mm.
find ways to communicate that are beyond these hardened structures
Mm.
um,
Mhm.
that we're often coming to each other with. And there's also a gentleness there in that kind of communication. Sometimes there's like a gentleness of softening into each other. And then also, at least what I was working with Constellation Core, was this deep listening, and also really claiming of space,
Mm.
taking up space,
Mm.
how generous it can be to take up space
Mm.
when you're also listening and in a practice of that with other people. Um, and, it brings up to me, I'm very verbal and I love cognition. So I'm not denying that in any way. And that's actually a very important part of work that I do in vocal de-armoring. And as a teacher, is building a bridge between this, what I think of as this raw, primal, um, immanent, in the body forces and flows, and tuning in and tapping into that, and then bringing the light of conscious awareness through language and cognition to round out the experience and to
Mm.
give it language, can help us go on a more sustainable path with that kind of work, where it can
Mm.
become more integrated into who we are
Mm.
as we move through the world. It's not just like some one-off experience of raw expression. It's like
Mhm.
learning how that is also part of our way of being. It's learning a language of its own. And
Mm.
um and I think that for myself, the kind of emotionality of me as a person, the bigness of my emotions that I felt in touch with since I was very young, was saturating for me,
Mm. Mhm.
overwhelming,
Mhm.
entirely overwhelming, and there was no other way for me to really move that energy. And often it felt like no other way to exist than to bring that into composing music, even as a child,
Mm.
and sometimes dancing, like maybe like we all do, dancing to Celine Dion in my living room at 13 or whenever that album came out. And I remember the feeling. I didn't have language for it at the time until much, much later, but feeling like these energy channels are ricocheting against each other, crashing
Yeah.
against each other, um, melting into each other, and so big and so much. And to not express it was an intense holding back. And in fact, in the music was the only way I could express it. And I was holding that energy back in my life with socially and in my family into such an extent that I did have, a lot, like I created so much chronic pain that lasted for a very long time. And like I was very hyper vigilant and the kind of, so I have this experience, this memory of moments of what it was like to let those energies be free and what it felt like to not. And to not was unbearable for so long. And it followed me throughout my life from a child all the way through teenagehood into early 20s, that kind of like hauntedness of there's these energies that are stuck in me. And there's no way that I can work with them with sort of wisdom. Like I didn't have direction. Even when I was studying singing or performing as a child and a teenager, the instruction I received was not intentionally. There was no ill will here, but just the nature of how most singing instruction is and was at that time further hardened my body and further tightened me against the life force that was inside of me. And it was and so there was this constant like tightening, pushing and pulling, like I'm so tight and I'm so sick and I'm held. And then I'm also a workaholic, but that's a different story. But then I'll go into my room and compose and like I'm pushing out the emotion because I have to push it out. I have to push it out. And then I'm holding it in and then I'm pushing it out. And there was this kind of, very, very real push pull. What I learned about later and what I teach also and what I practice is a way how to get in touch with a way of allowing, not pushing, allowing those energies to move through and out, and that becomes a lifestyle. There, it's not like I have to hold them and then I have to push them out. Like and this was a very long process to get comfortable with, but it's like what I was always seeking. And so when I found my teacher and learned that there were stuck things and stuck traumas in my breathing and in my body that were keeping me with this feeling of imprisonment, and that it was possible to work with singing in a way that actually unleashes and frees those held spaces, that's my composition started to shift as well. My singing completely changed, and how I showed up in the world would also change. And it was a long journey. And I have a lot more to say about it, but I think I'll stop there for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What age were you when you found your teacher, Marisa?
I was young. Thank God. Wow. I was 20 or 21. But it felt old. I felt like I was like, I've been through the ringer. I've been doing this shit forever and I'm so tight and stuck and never found anything that works for me. And it felt, and I had, because I had been professional actor a little bit when I was a kid, and I'd been also a pianist and playing in piano competitions and such when I was young, a child. And I was composing music and performing it as a child. So I felt, and I wrote a full-length musical about McCarthyism when I was 15 to 17 that my town put on. That music is really, really, oh my God, I cringe and I laugh. But it felt like, and then I was studying with the best of the best teachers. So it felt just like, where is this thing I'm looking for? Where is it? Where is it? Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
ask because I've also had this experience in a way I didn't realize before this
Mm.
conversation that
Oh,
this was your experience, because in
oh.
some ways I think it's very similar to mine. And I
Mm.
didn't find that teacher when I was 2021, which
Yeah.
then, or maybe I
Yeah.
found it, but just not through music. I found other kinds of
Right.
teachers.
Right. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but I did remember being at that age and just feeling the saturation. And for me, it was like this
Mm.
constriction. Like I had been
Yeah.
studying music all my life. I've
Right.
been desiring to express myself through music,
Right.
but it almost felt like I came to a dead end, you
Yes.
know?
Yes. Yes. I do
Yeah,
know. Yes. I do
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I felt that too. I felt that dead end. I felt it in so many ways. And I felt it emotionally, mentally, and in my body.
Mm,
I described this in my, as a singer, as a ceiling. It
mhm,
felt like there was a literal ceiling
mm.
on my voice. Like
Yeah,
there's a place I cannot, there's an edge and there's nothing beyond it. I don't like the Truman Show or something where it's like you keep hitting the edge of your universe and you
yeah.
can't go past. It felt like a prison.
Mhm,
And I actually now know it a little bit as like my soft palate was acting as a
mm,
ceiling. But
mm,
by the way, every teacher I had and every direction I had received to kind of learn to lift my soft palate made it worse. And there's so many specific reasons for that. But
yeah,
anyway, that dead end really resonates with me.
yeah,
I felt that too.
yeah,
And I know so many classical musicians, have this experience
yeah.
through when they're going through conservatory or, growing up studying music as children and
Mhm,
teenagers.
mhm. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's painful.
And it does make me wonder too what the role of being at that dead end or being stuck is in
Mm.
finding
Mhm.
liberation later on,
Yes.
you know?
Amen.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, say more.
I don't know. I struggle to put this into words
Mm.
because I'm just aware that, some people, like, it can sound like very Pollyanna. It can
Oh.
sound like, oh, or almost like glorifying suffering, right? Either
Oh,
way, but
I see.
but I do find that without the experience of, yeah, like almost being really stuck or being
Mm.
in desperation,
Mm.
how does one, is there such a thing as true freedom without also
Mm.
feeling that restriction?
That's so interesting. I
Yeah, I
think
don't
there
know.
must be. My experience is similar. Like I have been so grateful. I was so grateful to my chronic pain.
Mm,
Um, in a way, I could feel that later in my life because it kept me searching. It was like impossible not to.
mm,
Um, it was impossible not to try to resolve these actual physical sensations and symptoms. And it went along with my exploring of freer singing. It
mm,
was my limitations, which were very internal. It's not like from the outside, at least for me, I was when I was younger, I went out and I was being a performer. I was getting roles and I was singing, and even in college, I was doing quote unquote well.
yeah.
So it's like from the outside, this wasn't necessarily audible or visible, but I could
Mm,
feel it so obviously from the inside. There's something
yeah.
wrong and there's
Mhm.
something like not happening here.
Mm,
And partly it's the physical pain that I'm feeling, both in my body, but also when I sing. I used to
mm,
experience discomfort, like extreme discomfort. And I knew that couldn't be all there was. I knew
Mhm.
there had to be some other way to work with it. And then that way for me, and what I noticed for a lot of people, was not about mechanics and alignment
Mm.
necessarily. That didn't resolve the pain. There was something else going on that made it worse, in fact.
Mm.
Anyway, it is the things that it's like even today, it's like if I have to go to the gym because I gotta like keep my upper body strong because that helps my physical body not have pain. I'm so
Mm.
grateful for that because otherwise I might not go.
Yeah.
And I feel so alive when
Mm.
I do go.
Mhm.
And so in that sense, for me, my path, as you're kind of saying, my path has been very much sculpted by my own limitations and challenges. And
Mm.
I don't know any other way. But I did have a teacher once who talked about the old way was growing through suffering, and the new way is growing through joy and
Mm.
play, and that we don't
Mhm.
actually like it's a limiting belief and a limiting story that can also then keep us stuck
Yeah.
to think that, to kind of um, dramatize or romanticize that story that pain breeds and trauma breeds,
Yeah. Yeah.
growth. Because I mean, it does, like it just does, but that doesn't have to be the only way, and it doesn't if we stick to that story. Like we have to keep freeing ourselves from every story we create as we go along, and um, and be actively walking our own path and creating our own life and not, you know, staying stuck in those stories.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I can grow through joy and
Mm.
play as well. How about
Mhm.
you? Do you have that experience?
Yeah, I think so. I found that for me, that experience has been the most obvious through my meditation practice and my energy
Mm.
work practice because you can't
Mm.
meditate and you can't do energy work with your teeth clenched and your jaw clenched.
Mm.
That's not
Oh,
energy
you
work.
can. People do. I mean, I see
People
so many
do.
meditators sitting there with their jaws so clenched.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're
I
like, you got to do
I
vocal
can't.
armoring. Yeah, you can't. You got it.
True, I can't, Marissa. I mean, I've been noticing in my own energy work practice, there's such a huge difference between allowing my energy to flow where it
Mm.
wants to and then
Mm.
gently bring consciousness or awareness to direct it versus trying to get it to a certain point. Like I have to clear my first chakra, right? Like how many
Yeah.
people practice like that?
Right. Right.
Um yeah,
Right.
and I'm saying
Ah.
that with a lot of firsthand experience as well. Like I don't even know if I would use compassion to describe my feeling at this point about it, but I want to say that
Mm.
for many many years that's the place I'm coming from, and I'm noticing
Right.
now
Right.
a lot of my own fears of my creative life force energy in my life
Uh-huh.
comes from that experience of clenching, right? The clenching
Mm.
creates restrictions, which creates pain,
Mhm.
which creates fear.
Mhm.
Because the fear
Mhm.
itself is not real. The fear itself is
Mhm.
just an experience.
Mm. Mhm.
So, yeah, that's something I've been thinking about. And it's making me think also about what a phrase you said earlier, and I've heard you say this before, composing with the body. And
Mm.
I'm kind of seeing two sides of this experience as you're speaking. One is
Mm.
inviting the body into the process of composing and of
Mm.
creating, but
Mm.
on the other hand too, um, being aware of the body's limitations and
Mm.
allowing that
Mm.
to inform your creative process. I don't know.
Mm.
How does that land for you? What does that word mean?
The first thing that comes up hearing you is that there's no allowing of the limitations they are the limits. They will limit.
Mm. Mm.
The allowing is of the body and the energies to participate in the
Mm.
process of composing, let's say.
Mm.
Limitations can be so painful when we want to do something that our body won't let us do.
Mm.
Whether that's I want to sing that high note and my body won't do it, or, whether it's I want to, well, I'm just going back to an early time in my life when I had to make a transition based on a limitation, which was I'm writing music at the piano and I want to write all the time, actually. I want to write from morning to night. And
Mm.
um, it literally started to become like I couldn't even sit at the
Mm.
piano or at the computer without having a really extreme reaction. My
Mm.
body forced me to stop composing from the piano for a very long time. And that forced me instead to create an ensemble that I was directing and was part of that required me to not be sitting at the piano, but to be moving my body
Mm.
as I wrote, to be only spontaneously composing, as in improvising, so that I'm constantly allowing the life force energy to move through
Mm.
and to be practicing literally in a bigger room, moving my body around and not being beholden to the piano. And that was a limitation that forced me into some new experience that was something that was actually a true soul calling
Mm.
for me that
Mhm.
I would have missed. Like my body was screaming, this isn't it
Mm.
before, even though it had been it for a
Mm.
long time.
Mm.
Um, and partly it wasn't it because of my own relationship to it, my workaholism, um, my kind of mind over matter. I will sit here and I will write from, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what comes to me when I think about limitations that I mean, that's a limitation that's maybe there's also actual limitations that are real just by virtue of the fact that we have two arms and two legs, most of us, or we're not bodies that are just round with
Mm.
no limbs. That would
Mhm.
be a completely different experience. And so
Yeah.
it's really, oh, now it just makes me think about the relationship between that I love to talk about between freedom and form.
Mm.
Because when we come down to it, in a way, limitations are the um, necessary result of form, being a formed human, being a human on this earth
Yeah.
means to come down from the sea and the ocean of oneness, undifferentiated, aliveness
Mm.
into a form, a
Yeah.
limiting form, and learn to express the fullness of our aliveness through that limiting form. And that is actually the journey to becoming more free. If we were
Mm.
to stay undifferentiated the whole time, we wouldn't be able to take that life-giving journey.
Yeah. Yeah. This
Yeah.
may be connected, or this may be an ungraceful pivot on my part, but but I kept as you're speaking and I'm listening to you speak, I kept remembering an experience I had listening to your music. Another
Mm,
another really notable experience I had was um very often in your music, Marissa, you take us on this journey. It's almost like flowing through a river. And then suddenly it's
mm,
almost like there's a bend in the river and then we're
mm.
completely changed. And it's very it's interesting because I feel like it really speaks to your instinct and your
Mm.
gift as a composer and your skills as well, that you're able to do so in a way that almost like takes the audience's breath away. It
Oh.
doesn't feel violent, but it feels like it
Mm.
makes a lot of sense, but it's surprising. So I'm some of the words that I noted down was
Mm.
this idea of the connection between flow and disruption and mistakes
Oh.
and surprises.
Oh,
I feel
wow.
like there is a connection between these four things, right?
Oh.
Flow leads to some sort of
Mm.
disruption that
Mm.
almost feels like a mistake, but actually it feels more like a surprise. When it's skillfully executed,
Ah.
what can feel like a mistake feels like a surprise to the
Mm.
to the listener.
Mm. Wow.
Although that probably says as much about you, the composer or the performer, as it is about me. Because maybe not everybody likes to be surprised. Some people are like, "Don't surprise me."
Oh, I see.
I don't know, but
Do you
maybe
remember
there's a.
what did you hear that in a lot of different pieces?
I hear that in a lot of different pieces. I
Yeah.
hear that in the prologue to
Mm.
Tamar.
Oh, yeah.
I hear that
Mm.
in the Sappho piece that you shared with me.
Oh.
Um,
Was that the
mhm.
Simply Want to Be Dead piece?
Yeah, simply want to be
Yeah.
dead. Yeah.
Oh.
hmm
Oh.
I
Mm.
even hear that
Interesting.
in your Hold It Right There piece.
Really?
hmm hmm I was
Well,
like, "Oh,
oh,
I didn't think she was gonna take me there. She
that's
took
so
me there."
funny. Well, that's a compliment. I receive that as a compliment.
mm,
I um I what I don't know what I think about that. It's not like I would ever be trying to surprise.
mm,
It's but I think that I'm allergic to um what am I allergic to? Tropes.
mm,
Um the sameness, like falling into I'm allergic to a trope being more important and more audible um, than the alive internal content, is one way to describe it. And I kind of think that if something is really, really alive, it actually doesn't matter whether it's surprising or not.
mm,
It's alive, and that
mhm,
can be felt and heard and felt
mm,
somewhere, somehow.
mhm,
And that feeling of aliveness is different than the feeling different but related, actually, I think, to the feeling of familiarity. And sometimes the feeling of familiarity um, is more comfortable
mhm,
and can have a certain quality that might be mistaken as aliveness. Which is it gets complicated because it's also very possible, let's just say, in the realm of music and then
mm,
also in life itself, that something completely familiar, like a chant that's been done over and over again for centuries, that's passed down, that has it is so familiar. It can be so alive.
mm,
Absolutely. It can be filled with aliveness based on the people singing it and their own relationship to it. They're
mm,
recreating it anew in every moment. Um, and that's that's actually one of the main principles or practices or ways of working with singing that I've learned and am hopefully intending to transmit through vocal de-armoring, which is that no matter what song you learn to sing,
mm,
your relationship to how you bring that to life. It's not about finding some new interpretation. It's not about using your mind to like give it its own spin.
mhm,
It's actually the opposite. You could do
mm,
it from the outside. It sounds exactly like what someone else did before. But from the inside, your relationship to it is of being present in the moment and spontaneous and discovering it. You could do it the same way every time, but you're rediscovering it every time you do it.
Right.
And that's where aliveness is. And
Right.
that's a little bit of a tangent into being a singer and how that works. But so as far as my own music, all I really know is that I'm have always and always will, I cannot imagine any other way, been doing my best to be tuning into and connecting into the substance of my own core and my own aliveness. And so maybe it does say more about the composer or the performer that my aliveness leads me to be a little bit like a trickster and be like, bling, 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 weren't expecting that, you know?
Yeah.
Like there is that part of me that's kind of like, wake up, wake up. But I think there's also, I like personally, I feel often a bridge as a teacher, bridging this kind of, like I said before, like primal, raw energy moving in the body and then bringing cognitive light to it. And as a composer, I have always been interested in what I call beauty and not being weird just for the sake of weirdness, but having it stay so connected to my own heart and moving back and forth between something that is like just beautiful and accessible and easy, but to not become complacent or fall asleep in that it's moving always to new places.
Yeah.
And that is like that is what keeps you awake. And that's how life is, like to be in that familiarity and fall into the places of comfort and home is like part of the process. It's like a yin yang back and forth from those into the like edgy, stick my hand out of the placenta, poke through. Ah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What I'm hearing is also a dynamic relationship with time, space, and matter. There's this dance, right, that we're always doing. And it leads me to another curiosity I have for you, which is the relationship between your composer self, your performer self, and also your teacher self. Um, Specifically, the composer and the performer. It's interesting because I'm kind of hearing it meet for you in the space of desiring to have that, desiring to honor the aliveness and the dynamism of that relationship at any given moment
As a performer.
as a performer and as a composer.
Right.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, because that's what makes the work so incredible for me. That's what makes teaching feel, it's actually like being present in the moment and then allowing whatever's true to arise between when it's one-on-one work, which I love so much. But anyway, what's the question about
How do you know when you're not present?
that?
Or how do you know when a student is not present?
That's interesting. I mean, it's such a meta question because in some ways we're always present. We can't
Yeah.
not be present. We're here.
Yeah.
We're here. I mean, I guess, yeah, presence is one of those words. It's really difficult to define. And I think about the difference between presence and consciousness, and then also consciousness and hypervigilance. It's like if presence is about being where you are and also conscious about where you are, like you're where you are and you're also seeing where you are, that's kind of an incredible space to embody. And it's not the same as like being where you are and being hyper vigilant about where you are. Like there's a different texture and quality. Um, hmm. Yeah. Well, what comes to mind, it's like an impossible question to answer, but what comes to mind for me right now is this undoing model as opposed to a doing model. Like to be present is actually to let go of all that which keeps us from being present.
Mm.
To sing freely is to let go of that which is keeping us from singing freely.
Yeah.
The conditioning, the mental constrictions, the stories, and very in actual physical reality, the many, many specific ways we hold in our physical bodies to one by one explore letting those areas go over time, because there's a very beautiful reason why those areas are holding to protect us, which
Mm.
gets into the whole realm of working with trauma. But
Mm-hmm.
to let those go is to reveal what's their
Mm.
inherent birthright. Let's say,
Mm-hmm.
as a singer, there's no like someone comes in and I have a vision for how they look present and sing well. I don't know. It's just I have
Mm.
to listen,
Yeah.
and I will learn as one piece lets go. Like, oh, their neck stops holding and something emerges through their singing that's freer.
Mm.
And and I can hear this person more. And
Mm.
now I'm learning who this person is more,
Mm-hmm.
and I will learn who this person is to the end of time, ongoing forever and ever. There's never a static end point. It's a discovering. And I think that kind of movement, as opposed to staticness, to be present is to be connected with the movements, the currents of movement, and even to be with that movement when suddenly we're not present for a while, and kind of, you know, realize that that's also a part of life and part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah.
This is bringing me to your working definition for vocal de-armoring, which I want to read
Ooh,
back to you.
yeah. Oh.
There are a couple paragraphs there that really I feel speak to what you just said.
Mm.
The vocal de-armoring approach is unique in its honoring of what is raw, primal, and immanent, alongside that which is disciplined, refined, and abstract. Vocal de-armoring is not focused on particular aesthetic sound outcomes, though aesthetic improvement, which is subjective, is a certain byproduct,
Mm.
but instead on self-connection and on learning to sing from a place of honesty.
Mm.
Vocal de-armoring invites a person into freer and more spontaneous relationship with their own instincts, inviting the release of inhibitions and encouraging one's clearest and most honest expression. Vocal de-armoring guides a way of being which infuses the self relationship with qualities of patience, courage, playfulness, and curiosity. By noticing and freeing the body, soul, and voice through physical practices that feature specific movements, active imagination, embodied musical practices, and ways of working with pure energy, not the looping story of emotions, vocal de-armoring invites people into a relationship with themselves that is alive.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Thank you for reading that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Mm. Yeah, it was fun to put that together recently.
Mm,
And I guess I hear it as you read it, and I sit with it here. I hear it as a prayer, really.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
and an invitation, and an aspiration that
mm,
I have for the brand of vocal de-armoring. And
yeah,
I'm actually calling it, intentionally calling it a brand. And I've
mm,
come to really decide that that's the right label,
mm,
because the work itself is, no one owns anything. And when it comes down to it, because we're talking about presence and aliveness, in the moment when you're with someone doing work, you just grab, you just take from your toolbox all the
mm,
tools you've learned in your life. But really, the being with, I see you smiling, the being
mhm,
with is about just letting something emerge, something new emerge. And the more tools we have and the more mastery we have and experience we have, the more we can meet the moment. But the work itself, I don't own anything. I learned the work I learned from my teacher and her teacher and his father who founded this work. But of course, he learned his own work from he was Hungarian Jew in the early 1900s. And, the work itself is free. There's no name needed for any modality, for any work. It's as Ram Dass says, all of us walking each other home. But it works to me. I was putting together this language and writing to kind of, again, this relationship between form and freedom. This is a form that I'm saying the work is free, and this form is just a brand. Like, this is my brand of this thing. This is my brand of what I can work with and offer. And I'm going to name my aspirations and intentions and desires as a way to create a structure that can just bring it out into the world more fully. Yeah. Yeah. What's live for you? I love watching you.
I feel really emotional hearing you say that for some reason. I don't know if I can articulately express it, but yeah, it makes me very emotional. I think it hits something deep. And I think a lot about what it means to be part of a lineage, which I think a lot of us are obsessed with these days because because we live within a context that's so devoid of that, you know? I think you and I are both speaking, we live in state of New York, the ancestral homeland of the Lenape people. We're so disconnected from our own histories, from our own from our own inherent connections, and I think rightfully so. I see so many people, especially within the various spiritual communities that I operate within, being so obsessed or so restricted or so dogmatic when it comes to being a part of a lineage.
How
And
dogmatic? Same. How so?
yeah, for example, I hear a lot about people getting into a lot of very intellectual debates about who gets to claim
Oh, I
to be
see.
part of
Right.
certain lineages.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
I have a lot of feelings about that, and I think
Yeah,
it's
as do
very
I.
complicated. That's probably a tangent that we need to say
Yeah,
for
it's
another
a
day.
very intense tangent to take. I have a
I'm
lot of
sorry,
feelings
Marissa.
about that.
I opened a Pandora's box.
Yes.
But yeah, I think what's relevant to this moment and this conversation is just an awareness that a lot of us feel a certain hunger
Oh, yeah.
and thirst for
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
seeing that our work is valid and our presence is valid and our gifts are valid. And I think we live within a framework, a cultural framework that kind of forces us to do something about it, and it can be so easily misinterpreted, right, in some ways. But I really love everything you're saying about vocal de-armoring being a brand, because even our relationship to branding and marketing has been so complicated.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure. For
complicated,
me, I can use the word hate to describe my own feelings about that. Really, which was why I was so surprised when recently I landed on the word brand in a comfortable way when it comes to this, because I have kind of avoided that word like the plague. And then finally, from a very organic, real place, it felt like that's actually what makes sense here.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
best way to describe something without putting a stamp of like, I have created this I mean, I'll say I've created it because, I have like created
Yeah.
a system,
Yeah.
a brand, but
Yeah. You've created a
without saying,
sequence too, right? Probably
uh,
a sequence or like a.
I don't know what I've created. I mean, I'm creating it. It's creating. It's actually in the active process of creating with the help of the teachers I've trained who are
Yeah.
bringing it out into their own lands and
Yeah.
universes. And for
Yeah.
example, I mean, I have, I'll just say, I suppose I have high, exciting kind of aspirations for the brand of vocal de-armoring, which is that vocal de-armoring, and I've told you this, I think, is this umbrella term
Mm.
and how it gets applied, which because I think I have seen there's this kind of missing element in a lot of spiritual circles and embodiment circles and even vocal embodiment spaces that are missing something I consider critical when it
Mm.
comes to freeing a relationship to one's way of being with speaking, singing, and expressing through voice.
Mm.
Um, so my kind of desire dream is that vocal de-armoring is an offering that can be brought into many different realms and communities and do its magic, its magical work, be way beyond me and brought
Mm.
into these places by other people. And so this is all happening as we speak. And one example of that is I'm having these different branches, and I
Mhm.
have a desire to have a vocal de-armoring for sexuality, vocal de-armoring for maybe creativity. But
Mm.
right now, there's two, because there's a new one that's being developed with my apprentice Meryl, and where I think that I'm calling that vocal de-armoring for the nervous system.
Mm.
And so now there's vocal de-armoring for freer singing, and there's vocal de-armoring for the nervous system, and
Mhm.
those are two branches. The next one will be vocal de-armoring for sexuality,
Mm.
for freer sexuality. I don't know what I'll call it, eros, who knows? But that, you know, it's just a way. It's like there's differences. The work has its core. The work
Mm.
has its alive core
Mm.
that is how I've related to the work I've learned through my teacher and am sharing with my students. And that alive core is going to take many different shapes. And right now, that shape is forming itself into, with a little bit more clarity, into um, these branches, which just allows us to really specify who who these classes are for
Mm.
and to kind of give it shape again in the external world. The work itself is quite similar, but then there are also differences too. For
Mhm.
example, I mean, the nervous system and attending to one's nervous system is in, important. It's a necessary and important part of vocal de-arming for freer singing. I mean, it's actually one of the central elements.
Yeah.
But there's this overall, with vocal de-armoring for freer singing, it's like ultimately the goal is like be the most fucking badass singer you can personally be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is true. Like I work with Broadway, like people at the top of their field
Mm.
in and so it's like this work, it's about core aliveness, and it's also about mastery. And
Mhm.
so when we're working in that branch, it's like working with songs that
Mm.
you want to sing out in the world, whether that's at a very high professional level or whether it's at a personal level, like for your mom on her birthday.
Yeah.
There's this kind of space I'm holding as the teacher of that's what we're working towards. So
Mm.
that's going to define how we work. Whereas this branch of vocal de-arming for the nervous system is about also we'll sing songs, play around with songs. The song's choice comes less from I want to perform the song, I want to sing the song, and more from an offering of the teacher of what's right for this person given their state of their nervous system. What do they need? And they'll pick a song from that
Mm.
place. Like the student needs to soothe, and we're going to pick this very sweet, soothing song about letting go of
Mm.
bones and muscles. Or this person needs serious activation, and I'm going to find like a spiritual freedom song that's
Mm.
going to awaken and activate, and that's what their nervous system is needing right now. And
Mm.
so kind of that's having that as the overarching goal also impacts the choices being made inside of the sessions.
Yeah.
And so there is a difference, but there's a core element that's at the center of the vocal de-armoring universe as it,
Hmm.
brand as it comes through me and through all my teachers.
Yeah.
Maybe we
Yeah.
went off on a tangent.
No, that's
That's
beautiful.
good. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's making me wonder too, Marissa, if you would like to explore the connection between spirit and spiritual path, which I know is again a
Mm.
very big
Mm.
umbrella term,
Mm.
and singing.
Yeah. You mean
Hmm.
in my life or right
In your
now with you?
life. Yeah,
Mhm.
in your life.
Do you mean like as a branch? Are you suggesting a new branch? I'm into it.
I'm whatever comes up for you, really.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
I love it. Vocal de-armoring for spiritual, enlightenment, baby.
mhm.
Yes,
I've
this
been
has been
thinking
my
about this
spiritual path.
idea actually about, to go to your what you said about enlightenment. I've been thinking
Mm.
about like what does spiritual embodiment looks like,
Mm-hmm.
you
Oh
know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cuz I think I'm all for enlightenment. I love the idea of becoming an enlightened being. I'll take that. I'm a type A
Yes.
person. And also I think what feels reachable and exciting and genuine to me is
Yeah.
spiritual embodiment. Hmm.
What does that
Like
mean to you?
to
Spiritual
me, that
embodiment.
means letting more of my awareness of my spirit or soul self to
Mm.
be expressed through my body
Mm-hmm.
and through my lived
Beautiful.
experience. Yeah, like I
Beautiful.
don't want to. I mean, that's not true. I also really like to go into very out there techniques and completely leave my body and the restrictions of
Mm.
the body within
Mm.
the right boundaries. But I think
Mm.
I recognize for me, it's more satisfying to recognize or to realize that maybe, I can really emanate my spirit self in a difficult conversation with my father
Mm.
or when I'm talking to my
Mm-hmm.
accountant, my
Mm-hmm.
tax person, when I
Yeah.
have to look at my
Uh-huh.
finances and I'm like,
Yes.
spent too much
Yes.
money this year, Jonathan, spent too much money. And bring that lens, bring that awareness
Yeah.
of like what would me as a spirit or a soul say about the situation and really integrate
Mm.
that. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I digressed
No,
because
I
yeah.
agree. I'm with you. I'm so with you. I feel that
Hmm.
too. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Hmm. But yeah, what do you think about the role of singing, or what has singing taught you about being a spirit in a body?
That's such an interesting question. Mm. Mm. It's hard for me to answer that question, I think, because I don't know. I can't even imagine who
Mm.
I would be without having been singing and
Mm.
having gone on this path at this
Mhm.
point. It's also been so long that I know I know that being a spirit in a body. It's hard
Does
to
that
know
concept,
where.
yeah, does that
Yeah.
concept even resonate with you? Or maybe
Yeah,
you have
I'm
a
wondering.
different framework?
No, I do see myself as a spirit in a body, and I have always expressed that I see this work. My singing path has been the bulk of my spiritual path in this
Mm.
world.
Mhm.
I mean, I do a lot of other things too. So, but the core of my practices and the core of how I've had tools to explore what it means to be alive in practical ways has come through how I've learned to be with my body and voice.
Mm.
Um, the practice of being with my self when I'm singing and no sound comes out, and the choice point there between making the sound come out because I can, it's not hard, it's not a lot of effort, or staying connected truly to my imagination. This is kind of
Mm.
abstract, but let's say like um, let's just say I'm singing a little song like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, because we sing that in lessons a lot. That if I'm singing it a little bit higher in my range and I'm softening and melting, and then the sounds don't come out. Like they literally don't come out. Like it might sound like I'll try to give an example. Twinkle, twinkle, star, how I wonder what you are
Mm,
of the world side. Well, that's kind of me just making it as a demonstration, but that is something that happens when I'm not more focused on the sound of my voice than I am on keeping my attention with the music in my mind.
mm,
Um, when I keep my attention with the music, then sound might not come out, and I have to embrace or accept, allow that. Otherwise, if my intention and desire is to really be with the music, if that's my desire and my intention, and then no sound comes out as I'm practicing or warming up, I can allow that and still be communing with with Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
mm,
And if instead I start to get caught up in like, oh shit, my voice didn't come out. What's wrong with my voice? What do I have to do to like get a better voice so that the tone comes out better? And I want the tone to be consistent and even and sound like the lower note. I have left the music.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
and and it's a little hard to talk about because you have to kind of go on this experience because these things interact. Like sometimes the more I'm attending to the music in my mind, the more the sound actually does emerge. It
mm,
does come out, but in a freer way.
mhm,
And, nothing is absolute. Sometimes, every now and again, I can be like, I just need to like make sure I can get that dang sound out high. So like nothing is absolute. However, I guess I'm just using this as an example of what it is to be with my imagination and my soul forces, and my heart really with the music that I'm intending to communicate and share
mhm,
rather than with my own self and my ego. Like
mm,
that practice is in and of itself a spiritual practice, and it has repercussions all the way out into the world. Like where is our attention landing? How are we being with um what we're intending, desiring to communicate? Where is our attention when we're in relationship? And also that includes ourself. Like our attention can also be on ourself.
mm,
It's like what's happening inside me and how can I still be present and show up here and feel freer. It doesn't mean like I'm not saying like egoless as self abdication. And probably anyone listening who knows me is going to be like, you have the biggest ego of anyone I've ever met. I don't know. It's possible. I don't know. I don't know. Probably not. Probably if I'm your teacher, you wouldn't say that. And then if you're in a romantic relationship with me, maybe you would be. I don't know. um, but that's also a different story for another time. Um, yeah, so now I'm just making jokes, but there's something in there that's like one example of a kind of practice, of a way of you
mm,
learning through my vocal practice how to orient with practical tools like my attention
mm, mm,
and my desire.
mhm,
Like where am I resting the light of my desire? What is it that I'm with? Where how can I be with these energies moving through me, and how can I offer them out and be in this constant flow,
mm.
like you said earlier, even around my composition, like
Yeah,
moving between flow and then landing and then more flow and then
yeah,
landing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
I'm feeling us wrapping up and maybe arriving at an unfinished destination.
Love that.
but
Yeah.
but I do have a curiosity, Marissa. I'm wanting you to explore if it feels like it's calling to you too,
Mm.
the relationship between self-doubt
Mm.
and
Mm.
self-honesty.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's huge. Mm. Well, what makes you ask that? Is it like
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
as you're doubting you how to be honest with yourself, um, even when what you're honest about is that you're in a place of self-doubt?
I think so. I think that's such a beautiful way of framing that,
Mm.
because something that I'm experiencing in my being as I'm hearing you talk about your experience, even with the twinkle, twinkle, little star, or
Mm.
like this experience that I think a lot of us have of
Mm.
how do I sing honestly, right? It's about
Mm.
walking a tightrope, Marissa. I
Mm.
mean, just the idea of expressing something honestly, or expressing from an honest place in a performance setting is paradoxical,
It is, sure.
right? It's paradoxical. And so I think
Yeah.
I wonder how much of self doubt is a necessary part of being self honest, but then also we reach a tipping point where the doubt actually starts to become a defense mechanism, right?
I don't know. I think one thing that comes to me hearing you is kinda goes back to something I said before, which is actually this is where words disintegrate a little bit, and
Mm.
we have to just be doing the process, because this question wouldn't come up in the moment, or it might come up, but then there's something actual we're talking about in a way,
Mm.
like, um and because it's a constantly moving target, like, when we feel doubt about something, how we feel honest, like, there's no destination that is honest. It's
Mm.
like the same thing as saying, "How do I find my free voice?" Like, I
Mm.
don't ever say that. I people are li I try I mean, maybe I've said that, but I try not to. I hope I haven't. I try to say freer singing. How do I
Mm.
sing more freely? Sometimes how do I sing freely, but there's a gerund in that as opposed to a noun. There's a moving,
Mm.
like, in a way, actually, freely is an adverb, sorry. But it's like to be freeing is what I'm trying to point to.
Yeah.
Um, singing freely, singing with more freedom, that there's never an arrival point like we talked about earlier,
Mm.
and there's
Mhm.
always more to go.
Mhm.
And the feeling internally of how it feels to feel honest today is not how it's gonna feel to be
Mm.
honest in a performance. It's not how it's
Mhm.
gonna feel to be honest next week. It's not gonna feel the same as being honest after you've suddenly let go of a lot of, like, throat tension, that it's gonna be like you have a new honesty, and
Mhm.
then you're gonna have another new honesty, and, like, then sometimes the honesty is to just be like, "I feel like I can't be honest." Like, and
Mm.
that's sometimes honest, and then sometimes, especially if you're a professional singer, sometimes you just suck it up and you're like, "Today is not my most authentic, honest performance, like, I'm just doing my job," but it just so happens that my body and my soul forces and my energies have been on such an intimate journey we've been on an intimate journey together that my instrument is more honest.
Mm.
Already, like, there's more
Mm.
freedom and movement, so
Mm.
it's not like so I'm in a weird place, I didn't sleep well, and I'm kinda sick, and I feel stuck in my head, but my body shows up for me, like, because we have,
Yeah.
developed a relationship, you know?
Right.
Um, and so that's kind of what comes to me. It's like the shedding to reveal what's present as opposed to the trying to land with a
Mhm.
destination, and as
Mhm.
far as how that relates to self-doubt is, I don't know, to me, that question is like the idea of self-doubt is something else a little bit. It's related, but
Mhm.
it's something else where, you know, doubt. Oh god. Um, doubt, fear. I think doubt also comes with fear. And desire, right? Like desire and fear of not meeting that desire, fear of not being worthy, stories about not being worthy, and maybe sometimes also realistic stories about like you can't know what you're capable of until you try.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you learn through the doing. Like for me, just as a composer, my whole life, I wrote so many thousands and thousands of songs. I just kept writing and kept writing. And then they were received well, and that gave me further confidence to keep going. And sometimes they weren't received well, but I had developed enough confidence in myself. And it was my path, my kind of destiny path to keep going, that I would, continue. There was a deep well of sureness in me, despite surface doubts that would come up. But sometimes if we haven't done anything yet, then we will doubt because we don't have experience of having done something and getting good feedback, even if it's just feedback from a teacher or from our own self or from a parent or from a friend, or which is not to say that we have to like rely on the external validation. That's actually something very different, important, but different. But just that we have to be in active relationship. We can be with active relationship, which means experiencing doubt and what everyone says, doing it anyway, doing it fucking anyway,
Yeah.
And I'm not immune to that. It comes up for me in different areas of my life more readily, let's say, than composing. But I am nice bedfellows with doubt. And I still do it anyway when I can with the help of my friends.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful answer. Thank you, Marisa.
Thank you.
This has been such a gift.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we tried it again, because we can just out ourselves maybe that we did, and I don't know if you mind, we did another
Yeah, no,
interview and then
I'm all about iteration. And actually I think this may
yeah.
be a good point for us to kind of maybe land on.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that you sent me that voice memo where you were like, I don't think that conversation was it. I really, really appreciate that, because I do find that, and I don't know if this is more personality, meaning both you and I's personality, or if this speaks to our connections, or if this speaks to our background, even as people who are trained in the performing arts, but I do feel like feedback and iteration is extremely important to me, and I've noticed that as I'm not really actively performing anymore. And sometimes I really miss the kind of, fall down, brush yourself and get back up kind of mentality that I feel like a
Right.
lot of my, performing musician and artist friends have. Because there's such an anti-fragility to it that I think is so honoring of the essence of life. And this is what I mean by that. What I mean is that when we are alive and we're living in a web of alive beings, we're always going to get feedback, negative or positive or neutral, right? And I think feedback is actually, feedback is evidence of belonging. Because
I
to
like that.
me, belonging is inherent. We already belong in that web of life, and getting feedback is a very tangible evidence that we are in that web of life. And I think feedback is just incredible. I am so
wow.
into feedback. I
Wow.
really, really love receiving feedback, including the nonverbal feedback, because I feel that tells me that I'm not alone and that I'm distinct, right, from from other beings in that web. So I don't know
Hmm.
why that turned into a philosophical
Oh my gosh, I was like, I
exploration.
keep going. It's another 5 hours. Hello, everyone. You're still being
um,
here. It's so
yeah.
great.
But I just want to say
Yeah.
that I really appreciated you being like, I don't think that conversation was it, because
Mm,
I love going deeper with you. And I
mm.
do, I don't know if this has been your experience, but I do feel like this conversation, we've gone a little bit deeper.
Oh my God. The experience for me of this to the last one is night and day. This just
Mm,
feels
tell
so
me
good.
more. Tell me
I
more.
feel this feels right to me. This feels
Mm,
delicious. This feels
yeah.
like we really, this, I didn't feel in our last conversation, as I said, there was a lot going on for me. I didn't feel, to use that elusive, what the hell does it mean, word, present. I really did. I felt present, but I also didn't. And I didn't feel like I
Mm,
was rooted in what we were actually together for. And
mm,
our conversation about that
mhm,
helped me. And also, I'm here. I'm here today. And I think also for me, our last conversation was primarily focused around what is vocal de-armoring, a little bit,
mm,
like, what is this? And I think that, as you said, I have gone through many, many phases in my life, and, just laughing that we're just gonna keep going forever, but anyway, I was just gonna say, um, I am personally in a moment where, because I got really burned out, whatever that was, 4 or 5 years ago, and I
mm,
changed my focus, and I got married, and I got divorced, and I
mm,
have had other priorities, um, and I've been building out vocal de-armoring, and then I have to listen to my body. My body tells me, um, where I am, locates me, and there's a way that bringing in my compositions to this space with you and kind of what I think of as the more fullness of who I am, like, I was starting to feel constricted as the
mm,
vocal de-armoring person, which is funny because it's just at the beginning, and so I actually want to be that person, and I can more sincerely honor my own role as the vocal de-armoring person when I am being nourished in all
mm,
sorts of ways, and
mhm.
when it's like I am an artist, and I'm a composer and a singer, and it has become more and more like an itchy urge in me that I have to get back to that more.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like and means, I will know
Mm,
it in my own
mhm.
system, and I'm like feeling that. And so when our conversation was primarily focused last time on the vocal de-armoring, there was a way in which I felt like dryness, lack of
Mm,
wetness in my system, like
mm.
like kind of like a little bit of like, this isn't exactly fully how I want to talk about what I care about. I just like, I do care about vocal de-armoring, as you heard,
Yeah.
and I could feel today in touch with the wet fullness of that hair,
Mhm.
whereas before I felt more like smushed
Mm,
into a little box or
yeah.
into like a place that isn't actively in touch with what I want to be bringing. So I
Mhm.
think that's yeah, that's for our next conversation also, about chapters and
Yeah.
transitions,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how to connect into that. Because I will say that's something I've been, yeah, good at in my life, is tuning in to what's the next thing that must happen. Um, so this conversation has felt, just for me, wet and alive and and true and exciting and full and rich and
Yeah.
more relational with you,
Mhm.
and like more all encompassing. And I hope, I imagine, I don't know what it will be for the listener, but I'm imagining it's, if they heard the other one versus this one, they would feel the same way.
I hope so too.
I cannot imagine not. No, for sure. I'm sure.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. This feels really good in my body too. Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank
Do
you.
you feel a difference? Okay, we'll talk
I
about it
feel
after.
a difference. I feel a difference. I feel it was very important that you sent me your music. Marisa.
Mm.
So thank you for that, because I think the research was incomplete. I did
Yeah,
feel
that's
like,
great.
what was the missing piece there? Like there was a missing ingredient in the soup, you know, and I think it was your music, because immersing
Yeah.
myself in your music, and you sent me such a wide array of music. Like you sent me off-Broadway stuff, you sent me Constellation Core stuff, you sent me you know, your Song of Songs stuff, which is they're all so different, and yet they all kind of have a pulsing Marissa-ness
Oh, that's so sweet.
moving through it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And I feel so
Mm.
privileged to immerse myself in that. What a
Thank you.
gift. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this conversation. It's
Yeah.
been really, really wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yay! Okay. Landing, grounding. How can people find you, Marisa? If people want to connect with
Yes.
you,
Great.
how can people find you? What are some of the ways
Yes.
people can work with you if you want people to work with you?
Yes, I do. So my website is marisamichelson.com. It's MarisaMichelson.com. You can also get there right now by going to vocaldearmoring.com, which will soon have its own site. You can find the Vocal Dearmoring page on Instagram or my name on Instagram. And yeah, this is an exciting time for vocal dearmoring. And like I said, we have this new branch for the nervous system specifically, and a number of highly trained teachers who I am completely excited by. And we're growing this thing out with some more group classes. And I'm currently creating a really exciting video course that I will be launching shortly. And I do limited one-on-one work, and I have my teacher trainees and graduated teachers who also work one-on-one, and you can find us by reaching out through the website is the best way to reach out, or through the Instagram page would be the second best way.
Okay.
And yeah, there's some beautiful things happening this fall as far as one-on-one work and as far as group offerings.
Yeah.
Including another little one. I'm going to have these weekends at my house, Vocal Dearmoring community weekends.
Yeah.
To mirror the larger one we have in the summer that you came to. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Marisa.
You.
Such a gift to me. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks for being here.
and you to me.